Cheap Air Gunner channel. It's Cherokee Steve, and we will get to the testing of the stock Crosman Custom Shop 2400 KT in 22 caliber. Keep this pretty basic. The only CO2 cartridges that I have are Crosman, so I'll be using one of these capsules with a drop of Pell Gun oil on the end of it, and I will be doing the shooting and velocity testing. I will stick with the Crosman Premier hollow points. 14.3 grain. I'm assuming this is what was used when they did the factory 5-shot group and came up with the 522 feet per second. So obviously remove the tube's end cap where the CO2 cartridge is going to go. Use a drop of Pell Gun oil on the tip of the cartridge. Go ahead and drop that in. Seal it up with the end cap. Being careful not to start off the cap crooked and get it cross-threaded. Really want to avoid that. Finger tight. To charge the gun, pull the bolt back, cock the hammer, dry fire at once. That should pierce the CO2 capsule. Point it in a safe direction, take the safety off, and we should be ready to go. Get those pellets downrange. So back down here in the basement shooting range, let's see what this stock Crosman 2400 KT and 22 caliber can do. See what I can do accuracy wise. And that's about it for right now. We'll go over some numbers later. So far, my initial impressions of the gun. I like the way that it's weighed. The 18-inch barrel really noticeably puts weight more towards the front of the gun than, say, my 2289 that has the 14.5-inch barrel, but still balances out. Although it's noticeable, the weight, the center of the weight seems to be right over the forearm area, whereas my 2289 seems to be a little bit farther back. I do like the way that the gun balances out though. The trigger's very heavy and lends itself to pulling shots. The shots I took downrange right now, noticeably bad. A lot of that obviously is me getting used to the gun. Again, there is no rear sight whatsoever. I'm just using the front blade which is not adjustable. So getting an idea of where the shots were going, it seemed like the vast majority using the front blade just under the bullseye was giving me low shots. At one point when I compensated for where it seemed most of the shots were going and tried to adjust where I was holding the front blade, I was able to do a decent sized grouping, but I really can't and won't make a judgment on the accuracy of the gun. It's just not fair without some type of sight on here. So going over some of those numbers with the stock 2400 KT and 14.3 grain Crossman Premiers, I had a high velocity. I had 36 good shots, and then the velocity tapered way down and it was barely spitting out pellets. I grouped them in groups of 5, figured out the average velocity over each group. The highest velocity I got was 522 feet per second, which is what is listed on the 5-shot group that they did in the testing at the Crossman Custom Shop. The lowest velocity I got was 318. That was the last shot that was taken. But the first group of 5 averaged 517.5 feet per second. It's pretty cool down here in my basement, and I didn't take a lot of time in between shots. So the warming up of the CO2 capsule only took place over a few seconds. Probably can get a higher average velocity if I had let the gun sit a little longer in between shots. The second group of 5 had an average of 514.75 feet per second. So shots 6 through 10, not a very big drop off from shots 1 through 5, 517.5 to 514.75. Then the third group of 5 had a pretty significant decrease in velocity with an average of 503 feet per second. Now I start to see another steady decline over the fourth group of 5, which averaged 485 feet per second. That was a pretty significant drop from 503 down to 485. Now the fifth group of 5 really didn't taper off a whole lot from the fourth group of 5. The fifth group had 481 average feet per second from 485, so it held very steady between the fourth and fifth. Again, a very small drop off then through the sixth group of 5, which had an average of 477.5 feet per second. Now, this is when there's a giant drop off over 100 feet per second. The last group of 5, the seventh group, which I still considered that last group to be usable shots as far as down here, target shooting, putting pellets on paper. But it went way down to 376 for an average feet per second, that seventh group. So we see this steady taper off in velocity, holding very steady between shots 1 through 10. Pretty big drop off in the next group, very big drop off in the next group, small drop in the fifth group, and a small drop from that point in the sixth group, then a giant, massive. Practical purposes, you wanted to not have to adjust your holdover for your target shooting. Probably that last group of 6 is what you would do. That would lower the good shot total down 30. But really, when I opened it up after firing 35 shots, there was very little, what I would consider a very small amount of leaking of what was left from the CO2 canister. I certainly would consider it getting my money's worth out of that particular capsule over the course of the first 35 shots. With all of that said, let's move on to doing what is necessary to get the HPA conversion kit hooked up to the 2400 KT.